Welcome to this week's Line Opinion Panelists. We're joined in studio this week by Merritt Allen of Vox Optima Public Relations. Always glad to have her in. Martha Burke is across the table. She is a political psychologist and an author and a podcaster. Very much a podcaster. We'll talk about that later. And Sean Griswold is back. He is editor at Source New Mexico. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. Right. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland's return to New Mexico was disrupted last weekend by protesters at Chaco Park. You might have seen the news. The plan was for Ms. Haaland to talk about the U.S. Interior Department's 20-year ban on new extraction leases on federal lands within 10 miles of Chaco Canyon. Now, Secretary Haaland changed the location of the event to Albuquerque after protesters blocked the road. And Merritt, a group of Navajo Nation landowners who receive financial royalties for oil and gas around Chaco are upset over the Secretary's decision. They say it will cost them a chance at leasing revenue because their interests are now essentially locked out. Are they right? Is this basically a financial argument at that level?
Well, it's interesting because it was such a small action on the part of Department of Interior. This was interesting. I read a piece by New Mexico in Depth on this yesterday of over 1,000 leases in the area. This only affects 50 of them.
Oh, wow.
So it's really impacting a very small amount of potential drilling activity in the area. And so I put on my former government public affairs hat and thought about, okay, what are the optics? And here's the thing, when you're working for an executive agency and you're in DC, you're looking through the lens of the Washington Post and Congress and maybe the New York Times.
That's right.
And from that perspective, this looks great. We're saving Chaco Canyon.
Right.
And so, and I'm doing my boss's bidding. I'm saving a national landmark. I'm reducing the impact of a national impact, reducing the impact of oil and gas on a national landmark. I'm doing something for Native Americans. What could go wrong?
That checks off all the positive checks, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and the Washington Post is going to pick up on that story. They're not going to get into the nuance of it. Most people at Department of the Interior do not care what the Albuquerque Journal thinks.
That's right.
So it's a really good Washington story.
Yeah.
Problem is, Secretary Haaland is from New Mexico.
That's right. That's right.
And she's probably going to come back here.
Yep.
So this boomeranged quite badly for her.
Interesting.
And the Navajo Nation, of course, is not divided, is not united in their perspective on this. You've got individual landholders who are very unhappy about this because this is a key source of revenue for them. But you've got other individuals who live in the area, their neighbors, who feel like the environmental impacts are hurting them. So it's a story where it seems like truly no one is happy.
That's a good point there. Sean, interestingly, the All Pueblo Council of Governors is very much in favor of the withdrawal as it stands now. I'm not asking you to speak for the other side of it, but it's pretty clear they feel these protections of a historic site are sacrosanct. Is that how we should be looking at this at some level? I mean, where's the All Pueblo Council coming from on this, in your view?
It's fascinating. You bring up the story, Washington Post and everything. The people who paid attention to this story got a little bit of a taste of some intertribal issues that happened that have been going on here before this was even a state, before any first contact has happened. Pueblo people and Navajo people have been in this area for thousands of years, and there have been some skirmishes, there have been some issues, and there have been some fights, even in that Chaco area historically. And this is a direct line to all of that. And I think what we're seeing out of some of the language with some of the land allottees in the area was a little bit alarming and a little bit surprising. And I think that what the stance of the All Pueblo Council of Governors is doing is that they're looking for tribal solidarity. They're looking to say that we as the 19 Pueblos want to work with our Apache band relatives, as well as people from the Navajo Nation, come together as they did during the redistricting process. As we see, they say when we work together, we can enact change, we can form public policy and show political will. But then we see the divide here. And that happened with the differences in administrations. As we saw, the Navajo Nation elected a new president, and this is a new administration that has different procedures, different policies in place, clearly different ideas. Because not only the president is new, you also have new speaker, council, Navajo Nation council, and one of their first acts when they took order was to rescind a legislation that they had passed in their council that was in support of a 5-mile buffer zone, which is half of what the federal government moratorium is right now. They rescinded it to say, no, we don't want it at all. And so that just shows that as of right now, while the Pueblo Council of Governors is looking for tribal solidarity, it's just not right there right now. And it's a little bit split, and you're seeing that play out right now with the Chaco debate.
Good recap there. Excellent. Martha, it's clear the protesters are looking for some kind of compromise. Sean mentioned the 5-mile buffer versus the 10-mile. That's a tough moving piece because it could be 3 miles, it could be 2 miles. Who knows what the actual real number is to protect anything. But those who support the secretary said there's a misunderstanding, pointing out the fact that existing leases can remain.
Exactly.
You see what I mean? There's a lot of, how do we parse all this? It's hard to follow this.
I don't think they're looking for a compromise. I think they're looking for publicity.
Gotcha.
And I think Merritt is right. Some of this is coming out of Washington. As we know, immediately when this came up, some members of Congress who have nothing to do with New Mexico jumped on Howland, saying that she was in the pocket of the environmentalist, as if the protesters are not in the pocket of the Republican Party or the oil and gas industry, or both.
That's right.
And so I think it's sort of a tempest in a teapot. As you say, much of the land is already, the Navajo were in on the original agreement. It wasn't as if they were left out.
Right.
And
Excellent
a
point.
lot of the land that is now going to be circumscribed is not affected. Their leases are not affected at all.
That's right.
And so I think it was a big show. It's easy to block that road if you've been up to Chaco because it's damn hard to get.
That's right.
Darn hard to get in
You're not
there.
going to go around them, that's for sure. Yeah.
And so I think that this is more a political issue than a real issue about rights to drill and so forth.
Let me ask you, just a quick follow-up on that. Should Secretary Haaland consider that 5-mile buffer a little more seriously the first time around? Or does the distance really not matter? It would have been just a protest
I think
anyway.
If it was 5, they'd say we want 1.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it has been a National Heritage Site since 1987.
Right.
It isn't as if this is new, and no, I don't think, you know, you give a little more, and they're insatiable.
Yeah, that's right.
The oil and gas people are not going to give up. They're just going to want more and more. So.
Well, there you go. Exactly on that. Merritt, interestingly, Martha just kind of referred to this. Congress, Republican-led Congress, is really after Secretary Haaland in a lot of ways. Her ties to an indigenous environmental group, the committee says it has concerned about a possible conflict of interest because Secretary Haaland's daughter had previously worked with the Pueblo Action Alliance, something Sean had mentioned before in a previous appearance with us. Even if they could prove this, what does it mean at the end of the day? Is this something bad on Ms. Haaland? Does this mean there's corruption? Well, I don't get what this committee is going after
Well, what Secretary Haaland's family chooses to do is what they
Right.
choose to do. But I do think there's been a definite blurring of lines around the Hatch Act.
Okay.
And we just saw that with the press secretary.
That's right. That's right.
People are campaigning all the time now. We see this in New Mexico. We had some problems with the Secretary of State and some of the emails she was sending during a previous election season. And I think our elected officials actually need to govern and operate our government and not be on the campaign trail all the time.
Okay.
And so if there's a little criticism about stumping too much and advocating a political position too much rather than actually administering the cabinet department, that may be valid.
Okay.
That said, House Republicans are, the House is always going to be more emotional and more visceral, whether it's House Republicans or House Democrats in the majority.
That's right.
So, you know, of course, there is some emotion behind these charges.
Let me ask you, Sean, about it, though. The Western Energy Alliance says Ms. Haaland and her senior officials have granted special access to Pueblo Action Alliance and its allies and helped the group lobby members of Congress. That's a little icky, but how bad is that? Like, how bad is bad when it comes to lobbying? Does that sound awful to you? Is this something that needs investigation? What's your sense of that one?
I wonder where were these Republicans at with the last Interior Secretary and their ties to oil and gas industry and previous Interior Secretaries as well. It's interesting that now that you're throwing stones at somebody who's now caring for environmental concerns when oil and gas dominates that department. And I always like to look at the layers of what's happening underneath and everything. I think what's also significant to understand is that the Bureau of Land Management is also working on creating tribal consultation efforts on new oil and gas leases as well as other public land efforts. I wonder too if oil and gas is concerned that more tribes across the country will either delay, block, or prevent more oil and gas explorations in other areas
Let's
across
talk
the
about
country.
that. This is interesting. Our nation's watching this scenario play out with plans, perhaps. This is interesting.
Totally, and so the BLM is currently, and this is again a department that is under the Interior. So this is an initiative from Interior, Secretary Holland, and what it is it's for the first time providing consultation from tribal communities who are in areas where Bureau of Land Management operates public lands, either for oil and gas or recreation or any other type of development. And essentially you're bringing tribal communities to the table for the very first time. Right. And it's consultation. It's really it's not even much. Consultation, you don't have to follow the consultation. But to me, I wonder if there's a concern from oil and gas individuals that other tribal nations who do oppose oil and gas in a more strict and solidary type of way will stop some of these development efforts. Now, this also goes to show, as we're seeing with the Navajo Nation, not all tribal communities are opposed to oil and gas operations. Right. Yeah. Some of the largest oil and gas operators are Native American tribes in this country. Right. And so I think that's also what we're seeing here. We're seeing the various dynamics that Native American communities are not a monolith. Right. We are very diverse, and we all have various different interests, and we all have different ways of making money.
Excellent points there. In 30 seconds or a little bit less, Martha, I got to ask, when Ms. Holland was appointed, Indigenous communities saw it as a major win, certainly. It was, hopes were super high, and now we have this situation. Does this protest help shape the perception of Ms. Holland here in New Mexico? Does this do anything about her standing here at all with locals? Perhaps?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think she's done a good job. Most people realize that. They're delighted that we have a New Mexico citizen who's also an Indigenous person. That's a first. And we need that for the state. In terms of did you say granting lobbying?
Yes.
I spent 30 years in Washington in the belly of the beast. You don't grant lobbying.
That's right.
You go and try to knock on the door, and maybe you can get in and maybe not.
That's right.
But she doesn't have the really ability to grant lobbying.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Reputation's an interesting thing, but around here, she's just doing what she can. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Thanks to our Line Opinion panel. Next week on New Mexico in Focus, correspondent Antonia Gonzalez sits down with a former Pueblo governor for reaction to the Chaco Park withdrawal. And as for the Line panel, we'll be back here at the desk to talk about a new proposal from Albuquerque Public Schools that could block students with past disciplinary issues from enrolling in the district's schools.